Good morning and welcome to Taking Care of Business. I'm Craig Pendleton and I'm the Executive Director of the Biddeford-Saco Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Our show is heard every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. right here on the Legends, 102.3 FM. During our half hour, I will update and inform you on what's happening in the Biddeford-Saco region. Each week, I will have a special guest and we will highlight a local business or community so you'll better understand all that the Biddeford-Saco region has to offer. This week our guest is Devin Hamilton, publisher at the Journal Tribune. Welcome, Devin, and thanks for joining me this morning.
Well, thank you, Craig. I appreciate the offer of coming in.
Devin, excuse me. Even though I've had the pleasure to get to know you fairly well, you're still fairly new to the area, so how about telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. We've been here in Maine for about 2 years. My wife, Kristen, and I will celebrate 20 years of marriage in November. We have 3 daughters. We live out in Springville. We spent 9 months at the water, Craig, when we first came in at Biddeford Pool. And what an experience over the fall and the winter to be able to just kind of walk on the beaches out there and kind of slow down to speed up and enjoy life. So that's one of the reasons why we came here. It was really exciting to be a part of a community with such diversity, whether you're at the southern part of York County or the northern part or out in the woods or the coast. There's just a lot of things to offer.
Yeah, it is a great area, that's for sure. So what are your main responsibilities as the publisher of a local newspaper?
Well, I get that question a lot. People don't know if that's the editor or the publisher, so I always tell people it's like essentially like having a GM, a general manager, where sometimes you have specific roles that you're part of, like a department head, and other times that you're just overseeing the operation. And at this level of operation, at the Journal Tribune, I get involved day to day quite a few things, but like the newsroom is ran by an editor. Our circulation team, our distribution network has a circulation manager and folks that work in the warehouse, and then we have a creative team director, and then we have a sales and marketing team. So we do a lot of different things at the paper, and we work as a team. So the publisher just makes sure that gets facilitated every day.
How many employees do you have at the Journal Tribune now?
Well, between part-time and full-time, we're in the 40s in regards to total employment. Then we also have a lot of independent contractors, but we have a little over 20 full-time employees.
Excellent. The Journal Tribune is York County's only daily newspaper. What are some challenges you face putting out a daily newspaper?
Well, that's a great question. Some of them are as simple as making sure that an old press is working and doing its job.
Yeah.
Other ones come more complex. A lot of what we do has to be planned out well in advance. And, when you're ordering ink and paper and all those things, you have to do that months in advance of when you're doing it. From a day-to-day standpoint, you have some things happen very timely and by accident. If somebody gets hurt or a fire or something like that, it changes the complexion of the whole newsroom. From a marketing standpoint, if you have something like we recently worked with Salvation Army, they have a lot of bins out in the area. I think they have over 40 now that we worked on a program to help them, promote a good program. So that's part of what we do. So the thing I like about my job is it changes every day.
Yeah, it must be, you have to be really flexible. So like when you say there's, unfortunately a fire like we had in Waterboro the other day, must change the whole layout of the newspaper at times when you're trying to accommodate a major event like that.
Definitely. Well, in back in the day, years and years ago, you just had a printed edition. So if you didn't offer, if your Sunday paper was gone, and that happens on Sunday morning, you're not dealing with it until Monday or Tuesday, whenever your next printed edition is. But with the digital world that we have, not only do you have, photocopies that you put up on social media or your websites, but you also have video that you place out there. And not only do you do that on your sites, but sometimes you get, TV and radio stations will ask for that information from you as well. And you are the trusted local source. I mean, we cover it, Craig, with the understanding of tomorrow you're going to see our reporter. You're going to see me walk through. So we try to represent us from here.
That's kind of a good segue into my next question is, so where do you strike a balance between national news and the local interest stories?
That's a good question. Years ago, when I first got an opportunity to be a publisher, when I sat down and I said, okay, the Associated Press, which they do a wonderful job, but they cover a lot of state and national and some local news, but really the more regional stuff. There's a place for it, but it's not always on the front of the paper. Mm-hmm. Now, if it really affects people in southern Maine and York County, well, then it should be there. If it's the healthcare news and there's something breaking up, they replaced the Affordable Health Care Act, or they're, changing people with, previous disclosed conditions can now, get insurance. If that's the case and it's going to affect hundreds of, if not thousands of people locally, then we'll run with that national story above the fold. If we have an opportunity to run a more important local story, then that's what we really focus on. So it's kind of one of those, everything goes in the same basket. It's
Mm-hmm.
just where you put it in, if do you put it on the front page or do you put it deeper into the paper?
Yeah, I have to compliment you. There was a time period where the journal really did kind of function around all the AP stories, and we were less successful at getting the local interest stories, more prominent in the paper. And you guys, I just want to compliment you. You guys have done a great job over the last few years changing that.
I
So,
appreciate that.
so since you were hired, you and the staff have implemented some changes to help the paper grow and modernize. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on?
Sure. A couple things. One, from a community perspective, we wanted to be more impactful and connect with the community. So we started JT Cares, which part of what we do is, as I mentioned, with the Salvation Army. Another part of our program is the American Red Cross. We actually set up a couple blood drives every year.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether I find it the most convenient thing or not, I always expected to use blood if it ever came arise. So, I donate blood three times a year, and that's part of what we do. And then in addition to that, from a business standpoint, we started JT Media I'd say about 18, 19 months ago. And with the help of Justin Chenette and some other folks from the office, we really focus on digital media, everything from websites to social media. If you want to partner with Google and Facebook, we can help with that. One of the things that I find is a lot of small businesses, they have websites that they're not so proud of. It's not like they hate it,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not right. Or if they like their website, they really don't know how to market it. And one of the things that's really changed, I think Facebook, from the last numbers I saw, has about 17% of the local advertising spend. So if you're a local chamber member or a local business owner, that really helps you connect with people that are on Facebook. They're looking at your information and they'll drive to that. Our goal is to help fill the gap. So if you're a small store or a large retailer, we really try to spend that extra time. And it used to be that you would just run with the newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
or you'd run with radio or TV or whatever. You have basically three media choices. And now what we've had to do is add to our portfolio to make sure, one, we're relevant, and two, that our clients have a trusted place to run their advertising.
Yeah. That's, again, kind of leads into the next question of, and this is where I have the flexibility of this is my own show, so I can editorialize. The world is becoming digitalized, and we all walk around like zombies looking at our phones. What has the Journal done to capture us walking dead that are looking at our phones all the time?
Well, when you talk about mobile, and right now we have one mobile platform, and it's a little bit responsive, but not like we'd like. And over the next 2-3 months, we'll be going to a much more interactive mobile experience, because we know about 40% of our online audience is picking up a phone, and it's a radio show, so you won't see me pick
Looking
up
at
the
your
phone
phone.
today, right? But I did glance down to see my phone, and really we become trained. And it's really about the content. The delivery vehicle changes. So there's a certain percentage of our audience, and we stay loyal to them in print, because we know about 57% of our audience that comes online to our websites will not read our daily newspaper. They might come in once a month, grab it, for a story or something like that if there's a big event or something going on. But for the most part, they're getting their information free
Mm-hmm.
from a website somewhere. And that's one of the more unique parts of this, because we'd love to have it just in print. But we understand there's probably about 3 or 4 different entities that we have to push information out. And Craig, one of the challenges, one of the friction points of this industry is when you have a paid subscriber base, how much do you make free? And that's one of the reasons why we have a free Sunday paper, is it gives you a little bit of information. It's a little bit of a tease of what's going on. And it obviously has, Hannaford and Market Basket and some of the bigger advertisers out there. And it's a much more local yet regional product. But ultimately, with the digital, we're trying to develop not only video, but local information. And we're always looking for, resources if somebody has a community calendar, so we can maximize, local.
Excellent. You're listening to Taking Care of Business. I'm Craig Pendleton, and our guest today is Devin Hamilton, publisher at the Journal Tribune. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking to Devin Hamilton, publisher at the Journal Tribune. So, Devin, what areas do you think will give the Journal the greatest growth potential?
Good question, Craig. I know, in the last 2 years, we've partnered on some very specific promotions and projects. One of them I can speak to you with the Chamber Guide. That's something that we offer a lot of different print services. Some of them we do in facilities, sometimes we do them outside. So whether somebody has, a gloss stock magazine of any kind or a map or anything like that, we partner with, Shuttle Bus and some other local businesses that we work on multiple projects a year, and that's part of what we do. Another thing that we're looking at is bringing in mobile apps into the marketplace. One of the things that I think is very important, with so many different diverse communities, trying to pull everybody in. Not necessarily to identify themselves as Southern Maine or York County, but to have one or two resources that they can get the information that they need. And that's what a newspaper used to do. They used to be the primary resource on a daily basis. And that's what our goal is. Whether everybody picks us up or whether they tune into a podcast or whether they look online, we want to make sure that we're driving that content that people want every day. The other thing that I think is interesting, when you hear Facebook first, it's not necessarily vetted information.
Yeah.
So here's our transition for the future. It'll be about content, and some of it will be in print, but as much as digital. We'll still give some information free online, but it won't be as, every story is free or available, because we have professional journalists, and they go out and they make sure information. Good example, we have an executive editor, Ed Pierce, that works with our reporters, and they ask very important questions. Hey, Craig, what was your source on this? Hey, Craig, did you find out another person that collaborates this? What written information do you have that this is fact? And that's really, sorts us, I don't want to say from fact and fiction, but really from what we do as professional journalism versus somebody that just puts out a tweet and, hopes a rumor mill gets started.
Yeah, that's a great comment given today's world and all this fake news stuff. And,
right.
You definitely need to uphold your reputation for sure. Yesterday there was a report that the owner of the Portland Press-Herald purchased the Lewiston Sun-Times paper. What do you make of this consolidation, and have you given any thought to how it might impact your own business?
Sure. Yesterday, Reed Brower is a very smart man, very good business person, and Lisa DeSoto is the president and publisher at the Portland Press-Herald. They got a team of professionals that knows what they're doing. I have a lot of respect for how they do business there. I wasn't completely caught off guard and shocked that there's a little more consolidation, because I think the teams that are figuring out what's next and what's now are really into that, and they're passionate behind it. And then the families or ownerships that really, they've decided that the industry has moved, and they don't necessarily want to invest in that movement. Because as I said before, we'd all love it to just be print. And now it's something different. So, Craig, you have to keep evolving and moving forward. So my thought is that the Times Record and the Journal Tribune, I believe, are going to be the only daily newspapers that aren't owned by one company in the state of Maine. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But I also know, having been, owned by more than one owner and competing with the sister publication or whatever, a lot of places are ran truly independent. And they're dependent on the local market, how they cover a story, and they really try to be the mirror of the communities they're a part of. And that's my hope for that, that they continue to be the mirror in their coverage of the communities they cover.
Yeah. It's interesting. In some of my conversations with other chamber directors, um, we talk about the relationship between the chamber and the newspaper, and I'm lucky enough to always be able to brag about the great relationship we have. Um, Others have said that it's almost competitive, which is kind of interesting, and I kind of guess that was one of my thoughts when I asked you that last question. As these papers get bigger, um, the story is portrayed that the Lewiston Sun Times is going to remain the Lewiston Sun Times, and but you know you got to feed the animal, and as you get bigger and bigger, and so the competition for marketing dollars and things like that, and sometimes I see that that's probably what they're talking about, is we all compete for a small pot of money, and we do publications, you do publications, and do you think that at some point there'll be a movement where there's a consolidated marketing effort within a community that recognizes the need to tell the story? Again, Biddeford-Saco is growing like crazy.
Right.
And instead of it being competitive, it's this kind of symbiotic relationship between the local paper and different organizations.
Craig, I think different markets offer different opportunities. I know, in Kennebunk, there's a activity every Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
Prelude. I believe there's more than a dozen different promotions in some way, shape, or form for that. There's one official guide. So whether you're a marketing company, whether you're chambers or whatever, I think a lot of them have their own purpose. Some of them overlap, but ultimately some are distributed far, some are wide, and some are local. In Biddeford-Saco area, you have a lot of hotels. You have a short vacation season, essentially Memorial Day to Labor Day,
Mm-hmm.
plus or minus a little bit. So you have a 90-day window that you're really marketing more to the visitors. And then when it switches, it goes 8-9 months out of the year that you're marketing to the people that are here.
Mm-hmm.
They're really the foundation, the bedrock of the community. So the competition will always be there. It's just really, how do you find your partnerships? And one of the things at Journal Tribune that I think we do well is we look at what's out there, and we look at the brands that we want to partner with, or who we can make better. One of the good things about having a newsroom is we can find out about those organizations before we reach out to them. And I think that makes a big difference, because if we can partner with the Salvations of the Army,
Mm-hmm.
the Biddeford-Saco Chamber of Commerce, the brands that make sense for all of us to work together, Craig, then that puts us a foot ahead.
Exactly. I kind of asked this question, but I'm going to twist it a little bit. So going back to your thoughts around the greatest avenue for growth, your newspaper has a banner that says you're York County's only daily newspaper. Is there a specific geographic region within York County, any small towns and things like that you are going to focus on to try to get more subscribers and maybe gather some more news from that area?
Yep, that's a great question. We ultimately look at us being about 6 or 7 communities that we cover. So we probably cover about 65-70% of York County. So starting, we might have some distribution in Ogunquit, but we don't focus daily on Ogunquit. If something's out there, we'll cover it. But really, where Wells and Moody come together, we'll focus on some things in Wells and Moody. We also have the JT Beacon, which used to be the Making It at Home, that we direct mail on Thursday, so that covers that area. Then we also have Sanford and Springville area that we really do focus. We have Tammy Wells that does a exceptional job. Has been in the market for more than a decade, almost 2 decades now. Does an awesome job of covering the county news as well. And then we have the Saco, the Biddeford, the Old Orchard Beach area that we really do. That's our primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
And we have multiple reporters, whether you have Liz or you have Alan out there. Dina is our associate editor, but she covers stories as well. And then Ed Pierce that just moved into the market. One of the reasons why we recruit him is he writes 2 to 3 stories a day, and he's really into learning what's interesting in the marketplace. So whether you live in Kennebunkport, which we call the Kennebunks, we really do focus on those areas. And again, we also look at Alfred and Waterboro. So without looking at the map, Craig, I can say the names, but really, if somebody wants to get acquainted with the Journal Tribune, look at it for a month. You'll see who we cover, how we cover, and we might not cover Buxton every day, but once or twice a month when there's a story that needs to rise above, just the information on social media, it'll be in our printed word.
Sure. That makes sense. We touched a little bit on, you've added some services at the Journal Tribune, such as assisting in website building and marketing expertise. How would someone go about reaching out to you if they need that type of service?
One of the best ways, you can go to journaltribunemedia.com if you'd like. If you're less personal, you just want to check out information, you can go through there and get an idea of what we do, whether it's video or anything else, even drone work if you want that done. Or if you want to call the office directly, the office is 282-1535. You can ask for advertising marketing. Justin Chenette is one of the folks that focuses on our digital, and ultimately you probably use him as a resource. Or you can call me directly. My extension is 332. If I'm not there, I'll return your phone call. What we do is we'll physically go out with a client, or we'll talk over the phone, and Craig, get an idea, where are you at? Our goal isn't to sell you the next ad or sell you the next solution for a week. It's to understand you as a business and who are your customers, and how many of our customers are your customers, and how can we connect you and stay within a budget. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, we used to get X amount of dollars from advertiser A, and when we get a little less or we get a little more from them, we're not always, giving them the feedback. They're not always giving us the feedback of how are we best going to connect. Because ultimately, if we monetize a relationship, Craig, and it's mutually beneficial for the advertiser, it's mutually beneficial for us, then we connect the community better. And our readers, they're purchasers. They buy stuff. And that's one of the reasons why we like partnering with the Biddeford-Saco Chamber, is because, yes, they're business chamber members, but the local community, when you support us and we support you, we're better for it.
Yeah, good point. You're listening to Taking Care of Business. I'm Craig Pendleton, and our guest today is Devin Hamilton, publisher at the Journal Tribune. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest today is Devin Hamilton, publisher at the Journal Tribune. So, Devin, we kind of got into this in your last answer, but, I've been very lucky to have built a great working relationship with you and the Journal Tribune, and I thank you for that. You serve on the Chamber's Board of Directors and its Ambassador Committee. Can you talk about your relationship with the Biddeford-Saco Chamber and why you find it a great benefit to being a member?
Sure. Craig, I've had an opportunity to be a part of a lot of different chambers over the last 2 decades, and one of the things I find is the chamber, when done right, is one of the most connected organizations, not only to the business community, but just to people. And it gives you an opportunity. I've moved here 2 years ago, and it gives you an opportunity to connect with folks. And when I started asking around of what organizations, for my staff, I said, what organizations are we heavily represented in? Which ones are we not? And somebody said, well, we're members of the chamber, but we don't have anybody on the board or the ambassador committee. And I said, really? I said, okay, let's change that. Then I think I came in and I started a conversation with you. And I learned there was a lot of valuable things that the chamber has done. And you guys went through a recession at one point as an area, and then you were coming out of it. And I've had a lot of experience with economic development, and I've sat on a lot of committees and chambers. And what I find is when you're sitting there or standing there and doing the work at 10, 11 o'clock at night, or 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning with certain people, not in suits and ties, but you're willing to put the tablecloths on or off a table. You're willing to wipe up off a mess. You're willing to build that, what I call the sweat equity of organizations together. Then you become more of a team. And when I have a question, I can call Craig Pendleton at the Biddeford-Saco Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, Craig, I heard this. Or I need to know somebody that does this. And you can give me a straightforward answer that maybe somebody I don't have any working relationship with, Craig wouldn't. They'd be like, well, I don't know, I've heard these people, but I'm not really sure if they're any good. And that's one of the things I think we really gain from our relationship with the chamber.
Yeah, it's been a great working relationship for sure. I've enjoyed writing an article a couple times a month, and the space that you give us in the newspaper gives us a great opportunity to highlight our new members, talk about events, and we encourage people to advertise. We encourage people to reach out. I have had great relationships with the reporters that you have. Dina's a high school classmate of mine, so again, the interpersonal connections are great. So I look forward to growing this even more. I did want to take a moment and tell the audience that for a couple years now we've used your printing services for our community directory. It was not a service that I was aware of a few years ago. Great response time, great product. Just again compliment you. And this year, you and I, worked on a project where we ended up printing 25,000 more copies, and got the idea of putting a copy in your Sunday paper and delivering it to Biddeford-Saco, Old Orchard, Sanford, Springvale, Alfred, and Waterboro as surrounding communities that we have a lot of members in. Mm-hmm. But as a board member, we had this conversation last night, but we've tended to talk about member-to-member business transactions because we're a membership organization, and now we're trying to change that to be a consumer-to-member promotion. So, where do you see the journal fitting into that mix-up, and how do we encourage more people to advertise and provide you with stories too?
And again, you keep asking really good questions. I've found for the last several years, connecting with the decision makers in organizations helps tremendously with all this. You can talk with the staff and you can get an idea from some managers or whatever, but really when you get into the nitty-gritty of the business, you learn what somebody wants or how you can benefit them as an organization. And even if you can't, I've had a couple clients, and I appreciate our relationship, but I've had a couple clients we can't help. Mm-hmm. And when I sat down with somebody and you give them a real, evaluation of where you're at, and you said, hey, I can't really do this. When you build that relationship at that point, then they come back to you on the services you do have. And so to me, everything that you just talked about starts at a relationship level, that, you realize a newspaper company, you're here for the long term. Whether that's 5 years from now or 100 years from now, in some way, shape, or form, we'll continue to do what we do. The delivery mechanism might change. The services that we offer might change. Like we just started a new recruitment tool of HireNewEngland.com. And why did we start HireNewEngland.com? And that's a much regional focused, but it's local as well. It's because we have about 3% unemployment. Mm. And when you have 3% unemployment, what do you hear at a chamber level? Hey, people have employment. They might not make exactly what they want, but they don't necessarily have the skill. The CEOs and the managers and the owners, they don't necessarily have the skilled employees in the numbers to hire that they'd like. Well, that's part of that workforce development process that you guys are, kind of lead the charge on. And that's something that the Journal Tribune is very interested in, because if we can understand your challenges and the market's challenges better, and you guys can get the education with the on-the-job training that gets more people to have a higher wage, that to be able to afford their family, and let's face it, the housing in this area, it's a little higher because we're by the coast. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to help people increase the standard of living, and that's one of the small things that we can do by connecting the people that are looking for employees with employees that are looking for those job opportunities, whether it's at $9 minimum wage or whether it's at $40 an hour. Our goal is to help facilitate that. And that's how we evolve, by building those relationships with those conversations.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Devin. That's all the time we have for today. I appreciate your time and your thoughts, and I especially want to thank you for your leadership at the Journal Tribune.
Well, thanks for inviting me again, Craig. And if anybody ever needs anything, whether you're subscribed to the paper or some marketing, please give us a call at the 282-1535, and we'll be glad to help you.
Excellent.